Thank you all for coming today. This is the CoMotion Speaker Series where we get leaders and innovators from our really fantastic local innovation ecosystem, which, as you know, is doing really well and growing all the time. And it's really exciting to have our guest today, Brent Frei, who's come to talk to us. So I'll give you a little bit of background on Brent, and then we'll get started. And for those who don't know me, my role here is heading CoMotion. I'm Vikram Jandiala, Vice President for Innovation Strategy at UW. And part of our mission is connecting to the innovation ecosystem so that our faculty, our students, and staff can really understand what innovation and entrepreneurship is about and really be a part of this change which is happening in the Seattle ecosystem and Washington State. So, Brent, thank you for being part of this. So I'm going to read out a few things and then we'll get started. So he has 2 engineering degrees from Dartmouth. We won't hold that against him, but he's no stranger to the Northwest startup ecosystem. Several leadership roles, including as Executive VP at Intellectual Ventures. We'll get into some of those stories. He co-founded Onyx Software in 1994 after being at Microsoft and being very successful there. He then co-founded Smartsheet, which, as many of you know, went through a successful IPO and served as its Chief Marketing Officer from 2007 to 2016. Most recently, he's created a very interesting new startup that we'll talk about. It's TerraClear, which he's called a Roomba for rocks. So we'll get into that more as well. And yes, he does have stories and learnings from his time as a football player as well. One particular incident I think we talk about is when he at Dartmouth when he was playing Columbia and what his coach told him. I think it's a great story. So I don't want to steal his thunder. Let's get started. So again, Brent, welcome. Thank you for having me. So let's start at the beginning. I know you talk a lot about what your parents have instilled in you and how you grew up. So let's start there, and we'd like to share some of your early experiences.
Sure. I grew up on a farm in Idaho, wheat, barley, and beef cattle, and I'm one of 6 kids, the second one, and so I ended up working with my dad almost every day when I was very small, and which was. I mean, I think it was probably the best way to grow up in the whole world. I got to do all kinds of things, including one of the favorite stories I tell is Dad needed to move a pickup and a tractor from 5 miles away, and so he put me in the pickup and he put it in first low and pulled out the choke and said, "You just get on the road and go." And he followed in the tractor. And my 5-year-old sister, I was 6 years old, and she was 5. She was sitting in the seat next to me, and I drove it all the way there and parked it in the shed. And that was almost exactly how my whole life was in the early days, where I got to do very important things. I felt very important, and I was pitching in. And I think about that now with my kids. I would never let them do that. But it was such an important growing experience.
And since that point, you've taken that same mindset and obviously applied it in many different situations. So let's talk about your time at Microsoft, where you really created your own product and worked internationally as well, and really learned different cultures and how CRM was something that was becoming really critical. I think that would be a great story.
So I left Motorola, where I was working on their first flip phones, as an engineer to go be an intern at Microsoft for $9 an hour. And had to learn how to program at night to be useful. And I think my title was Associate Programmer Analyst, and there was no title below that anywhere in the company. And the job I had was apparently in Australia, in the subsidiary in Australia, they had a box in the closet of all the registration cards of the people that had sent them in from their software purchases, and they wanted to digitize those, put them in a database, and let the support people be able to look them up, and so only give support to people who had registered their product. And I had a really smart boss. His name is Howard Hawk. He said, if we digitize that information, it's going to be useful for marketing and sales and other folks. And so let's make a customer-centric database instead of an incident or a call-centric tool to just track calls. And so we did. We built that, and we deployed it in Australia, and it was really successful. They were using marketing and sales, and Australia was doing all these creative things, and Hong Kong heard about it, and so we put it in there. It was just myself and 2 other people that were just slightly more senior than I was, and then we did it in South Korea, and then we did it in Singapore, and then then one day when I'm not overseas at those things, I'm back in Redmond, and Howard says, "Hey, Bomber wants to see you." And at the time, this was 1992, Bomber was the office of the president, so him and Maples and Goddard. And as I'm going in there to have this meeting, this 5-minute meeting with them, Howard says, "Whatever you do, if you're right, don't back down." I'm thinking, what does that mean? What is that? Okay, all right. So I go in there, and I give him this little demo of what we're doing down in Australia, and he gets up and he's and spit's coming out of his mouth. He's like, "What are we doing?" Blah, 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 blah. And I was just plastered against the wall, and then I said, "Well, actually, that is the way they do it, and here's why." And then Steve sat down and goes, "You're probably right." And I think it was just testing conviction, but it was a very successful IT project that then we were able to do a couple other revs out of it. The team got much bigger, and it was really the very first truly holistic CRM solution that had been deployed, and that was the impetus. That knowledge about how to do that was what then helped me found Onyx, which was the company I started in the basement.
Mm-hmm. And then Onyx, as you said, when we're talking, give you a lot of lessons, both on the positives and the challenges.
Well, we founded Onyx in '94, and it was that was before the bubble, the big internet bubble, for all those of you that were alive at that point. And it was a crazy time. It was incredibly exciting. It was incredibly stressful. We were growing at 100% a year for 7 years in a row, and nothing was sane. Everybody that you hired expected to be a VP, and they expected to, that they were going to be rich in a couple of years. And it was just crazy times. And then it was not. Then the bubble burst, and all of a sudden revenue streams dried up, and we went from 800 people. We had to immediately fire 270 people that were awesome. It was amazingly emotionally hard, and so yeah, there was a lot of things that we did right. We didn't spend $2 to make one like a lot of the other internet companies did, and so when the bubble burst, we didn't implode, but we had to manage the business down, and that was very difficult. So lots of stress on the way up, lots of stress on the way down, but at the same time, it was an incredible learning experience. Great people. Just if we did one thing great, it was we hired exceptional people. That I know of, 18 of the people that worked at Onyx are now CEOs of their own companies. And so it was a testament to the kind of quality that we were able to attract at the business. And
what the final product was for Onyx, I can't remember.
A CRM, it was a customer relationship management. So a database of customer information that you could do marketing, sales, and service against as a business. So our customers were typically medium to large businesses. So the Seattle Mariners were a customer, the Fidelity, American Express. They could be big or small, but it was typically medium to large businesses. $500,000 to $1 million price tag. 4-legged sales, 9-month-long sales cycles. Very different than Smartsheet, which is exactly opposite of that, thankfully.
So you talked about the exceptional talent that you had at Onyx, and obviously you continued that at Smartsheet as well. So what are your hiring principles and management principles, or lack of management? You talked about management is not something you really are excited about, but you know how to do it, or you get the right people. So what's your hiring sort of philosophy and how you work with people?
You asked in our pre-thing about what makes a good manager, and I actually don't know because I'm a terrible manager. I like a culture that was like my experience at Dartmouth, which was everybody there was smarter than I am, and they all had a purpose. They were ambitious. They were team-oriented. And when you got a group of people like that together, you could accomplish amazing things. And so largely, what you look for is people that they're coming to your company for the right reason. They're smart. They're ambitious. They're ambitious not just for themselves, but for the whole team. And I got to the point where I could pick those people out pretty quickly. There's a set of questions I'd ask, and you just started getting the feeling for that person's character. And I think you search for character. And then ultimately when you get those people, you're able to attract A people. The problem with attracting too many A people is you can't all be bosses, and A people all want to be in charge. Right? So how do you do that? And so that was the balance, was getting A people, giving the ability to have input on everything, and then getting to an answer and getting everyone to say, well, if we didn't all agree, it doesn't matter, but because we just picked this one, but we all had input. And that was it tended to be a little bit more frayed in the direction versus the dictator that goes, this is where we're going, and all the way down. That's the that's the operational plan. I think we were better off for having a lot of input and being a little bit more frayed with 8 people.
Then as the company grows, like, one of the challenges always is the switch from sort of innovation to scaling and public. And you mentioned a couple of inflection points as companies scale. Can you talk through those? I think that's
been through it twice with software companies, both Onyx and Smartsheet with exactly the same experience. Founding team, really, really high quality, exceptional. People that we hired, the first 100 people are really amazing. But at the 100 or 120 mark, that's when we had to put in the first, second layer of management. So everyone didn't report now to one of the 4 to 6 people that were running a department, and now it was the first time that the people that were early didn't necessarily scale into those jobs. No indictment on the quality of that person. They were great individual contributors, they're incredible software architect and coder, but they're not a manager. They can't hire and fire and career manage. That's not their expertise. But for them it's like, oh, I've been here forever and I'm not the guy in charge of this group. It was very emotional, and so we it was the first time we lost people. No one had ever left the company before, and then we lost them. They're like, oh well, I'm not important. I'm out of here. And that was. We did it exactly the same way at Smartsheet. It's we tried to set expectations better at the beginning. We tried to do a better job of communicating what expectations were in the different roles, and say it's not really suited to you, and so having alternatives. And doing a better job of highlighting the value of individual contributors. And part of that is just simply the responsibility and also equity or compensation. We did a little bit better job of making it more transparent that people that were individual contributors made as much or got as much stock as people that were in management roles. And so transparency was always a really big thing. Now, it wasn't, we can't just show everybody everything, but the basic philosophy when we made any decision was, if the books did fall open in front of all the employees, and they all looked at it, mostly they'd go, yeah, that's about right. That's about right. So we did the same way. And then at 225, that was the most brutal time, both times. Because that was when the last of the early people that had made it through the first one weren't going to make it to the next one, or were going to make it. Because when they made it to 225, they made it all the way after that. So that was another really wrenching time. And in particular, too, because we got so specialized at 225 that now I'm just doing SEO, or I'm just doing, I don't get to see all the rest of what's going on in the business. And that's tough for early folks who used to see everything. They used to be involved in all the discussions. So.
Just for the format, we'll open this up to questions very soon. So otherwise it becomes a little difficult for the recording as well. But plenty of time for questions, so don't worry about it. So going back to, you did the large company and then you decided to step out and do yet another company, which is the one you're doing now.
Characterize?
Yes, let's talk about that. That seems a completely, a inflection, a complete change, but clearly something that's very, something you're very passionate about and something you've seen for a long time.
Yeah, none of the companies I started were exactly a plan. Like, hey, I want to start a company and I got to figure out a thing we're going to do. They mostly were just like, this is a big opportunity. I get it. I know there's a solution. It's a really hard problem in a really large market that no one's ever solved, and that would be fun to be successful at. And that was the case with CRM. That was the case with Smartsheet. I mean, you may not even know what Smartsheet is, but we do work management, tracking and collaborating on work. Well, there are hundreds of companies that have built software for that. Hundreds. Why would we do that? Because none of them, there's no runaway winner there. Everybody hates whatever tool they're using to track work. Everybody. Well, it's so anyway, I can't seem to stop myself. When there's an answer to one of these really hard problems, like there was at Smartsheet, then I just do it. So this summer I was mostly at home working farming with the folks and my brother and sister who worked full time with my dad. And I was an extra person they didn't really count on, and so there was a lot of days where I sort of wasn't needed, and so I'd go do the thing that was important but not urgent. And what is that? Well, it's fixing fence up on the cattle ranch in the brush, or it's, digging out a ditch where they need to put a new pipe, or unfortunately, picking rock. And picking rock in agriculture is this every year, nonstop thing. And while Dad owns all 5 types of the machines that are supposed to do it mechanically, we still do it by hand because they just don't work very well. And so for 10 days of the summer, that's all I did was pick rock out there by myself. And as I'm out there, I'm thinking, gosh, why am I doing this? This is crazy. There's technology that should be able to do it. Well, I know it doesn't work. So I'm like, but there's modern technology to be able to solve this problem. So I'd go home at night, and I'm on Google, and I'm saying, lasers, ultrasound, whatever it is, I can just blow them up in the field. Well, it turns out that takes a lot of power. And it's kind of dangerous. But then I get to thinking about a lot of what you all are working on, cameras and neural nets and robotics and autonomous driving and geopositioning. I'm like, drones, there's an answer. And I'm just thinking, all the pieces of technology exist. Someone just got to string them together. So it's not that it's, quote, not that hard. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. Why would I build a rock picking business? Saying, I don't have to. I don't need to be stressed about another company again. Why would I do that? But I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I keep talking to friends of mine about it until one day, two of the guys actually that I've started the business with, they're like, let's do this thing. I'm like, oh, shucks. Now I'm going to have to do it. And so we did. We started in October, and we set it up in a way that works for all of us. And I'll be darned if we didn't attract some of the most interesting people. Like one gentleman, I don't actually know what his real name is. We call him Bishop. He was an underwater Navy welder, but with a special interest in robotics. And so he's out there in the shop welding stuff together and coding the robotics to hook it up. It's something like it just reminds me that whenever you've got something you think there's nobody that knows anything about this, yes, there is. There is a human being out there that knows that thing. So we're trying to build this tool, and it's a pretty fun market because nobody understands it.
How big is the market?
Oh, it's giant. 350 million acres of farmland in the United States that qualify. Now, not every acre has a rock. Even where there's rocks, not every acre has a rock. But I just for the VC's sake, I say, okay, there's 351 million acres. Probably half of that is not in the Midwest where it's 10-foot deep soil and there's no rocks. If only 10 million of those acres are applicable, and I can build a tool that can pick 400 rocks an hour, I can charge $150 an hour. That's a $1.5 million market. And then the first thing I say is, well, then after you pick that acre, then it's done. It's no longer in your market. Oh, no. So I did. Even my team asked that question, and so I took them out to Grangeville, Idaho, my hometown, and we went out to this field and we looked at this area that was seeded, and there was just tons of rocks in it. And I said, this area, you guys, this summer, I personally picked this by hand clean for 3 days. And my dad and my brother Mark went through with the seeder, and they seeded and pulled up all these rocks after they seeded. And I said, oh, by the way, see up on the hill, that scab patch up there with that big pile of rock? They've been doing that for this spot for 100 years. So our market is never going away. And so it's a very large market.
Fascinating. And how big is that company now? How many people? Where are you based?
We are 8 full-time. We have 4 interns this summer. One's from UW. And we're based in Bellevue.
And you're hiring?
We're hiring.
Oh, really?
And in fact, if there's anyone that's really good at coding, our drone's flying over and doing a lot of imagery to pick, to create the map. So we're building a mobile app that you can look at the outcome of that, and then pick where you want the Roomba to go get the rocks, schedule, and so forth. So if you can code, it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge, just like Smartsheet. Pardon me? So that is a good question. Why stop there? Who said we're stopping? So there's an incredible amount of automation focus in ag right now. It's a gold rush, and mostly what people are looking at is they're looking at weeding, picking, trimming, spraying in specific ways that can change both the economics of the effort, but also address a lot of the labor problems. So, I mean, a lot of it is immigrant or low-skilled labor that will come in, they can't get now to pick apples or whatever. And one of the challenges with the automated side of that is the compute power to do it right. If I'm going to pick a strawberry, or if I'm going to trim the third leaf on a grapevine, I got to be fairly accurate. And so that last 10 centimeters, I'm going after it. Like, can I get that? And so what we're going to do is we're going to do an end-to-end solution, which is we're going to tell you where the rocks are, and we're going to pick them. And I actually don't have to be that accurate. I don't have to be gentle with the rock. I don't have to hit it right on. I can just, and if I'm wrong, I just crushed a clod, and so we're good. And so the learning from that end to end is going to be applicable to, well, guess what? Spraying a weed or picking a potato that doesn't. So there's a logical progression.
I think there was an interview with you where you talked about your greatest strength is your knowledge of agriculture, right? And so that's clearly coming out. One more strength is football. So let's talk about that lesson from your coach in that game with Columbia.
One question I ask people that come to interview to work for us is I say, what was one of your, tell me a time when you came to an impossible chasm or an immovable object in your career where you just couldn't succeed. There's no way. And then what'd you do? And it's interesting. Most people are like, well, it never happened to me. And that's BS. It's happened to almost everybody. And so I'll give them a couple examples in my own career, and then they go, oh, yeah, all right. I've had one like that. Okay. And because that is the difference between great employees and average or crappy ones, and that you figure out a way. And if you're an entrepreneur, that is absolutely essential. You will hit 5 things in starting a company that are super valid reasons why you should stop. Like, Microsoft just came out with exactly the same product, or we ran out of money, and nobody would question why you stopped. Yeah, of course you'd have. That was good business decision to stop. But it's people that plow through those things that are successful. And I was my senior year at Dartmouth. We were playing Columbia. They were about to break the record for most losses, and so Sports Illustrated was there, and it was pretty clear that the refs were giving them a pretty good advantage. And so I'm on defense, and I'm supposed to be putting pressure on the quarterback, and so I'm running in there, and this big tackle he grabs me and he tackles me on my way to the quarterback, which, as anyone that follows football knows, that's holding and that's illegal. And I look up, and the ref is looking right at it, and he doesn't throw the flag, and I'm like, and so I come off the field, and my coach grabs my face mask. He's like, "You've got to put pressure on the quarterback." And I said, "Coach, they're holding out there. The refs aren't. Their coaches are holding." And he just goes, "Well, okay, then we're going to lose." And I was thinking, yeah, everyone's got a valid excuse why they can't be successful, but in the end, you'll lose. So what do you do instead? How do you overcome what's not fair or what is too difficult? No, you don't do that. So it was a real lesson in determination and effort and never quitting. And so that's one of the tests I have for the people that come and work with us. And I'll hear it all the time. Like, hey, we can't do the demo by Friday because the 3D printer isn't going to be done until such and such. I'm like, well, what would you do instead then? Let's get the torch out and heat up a piece of metal and bend it over and drill a hole in it, and then we won't need that 3D printed thing. Oh yeah, okay. And then you're off.
So I promised we wouldn't discuss politics, but there was one thing that you said which I think is very inspiring, and that's the question that people get asked about. So the large cities versus the rest of the United States, but also globally, that there seems to be a divide in terms of the big places, the big towns are doing really good on high tech, and the mobility seems to be difficult. But I think you have a different take on it, and you've seen this and you actually embody it. Would love to get your take on what you think this country could be doing more of, and what we're not doing enough of, or is everything fine?
No, everything's not fine. Yeah, it's always difficult to answer a politically charged question.
Only one. That's it. I'll stop.
It's the only one. I mean, I'm a big believer in personal responsibility. I got that instilled in me by my folks, that you're responsible for yourself, and no matter what your lot in life is, if you apply yourself, if you try hard, that you can make a difference. You can make a difference for yourself, and you can make a difference for the people around you, and that when you die and you look back, did you matter? Mm-hmm. So, I actually study this quite a bit, and I have a couple of friends that this is their life, is what they study this stuff. And if you look at the mobility between the top 20, who's in the top 20% and who's in the bottom 20% economically or socioeconomically, there's incredible mobility in this country. If you go across any decade, the changes, the people that were in the bottom 20, half of them are moved up, and the people in the top, half of them are moved down, and the same thing happens in between them all. We have a country that's designed to enable you to achieve whatever you want, and certainly there's a lot of things that can help. I mean, I grew up in a very poor family, but it was insanely rich because my parents were so awesome. You know, we had a tight family. They were, you know, they loved us. They, you know, there was still the right values, and it's difficult if you don't have that, but you can make that case for all kinds of different, you know, parts of your life or other people's parts of their life. So I think that, you know, we should start with personal responsibility. Like I donate a lot. I donate my time. I donate money. I donate my expertise because that's super important. I don't want a government to tell me I have to. I believe that what you subsidize, you get more of. So if I spend more money on the homeless, I will have more homeless people here. And you know, it doesn't mean we shouldn't solve the problem. It means we should solve it correctly. And there's no difference in government or in policy than it is in business. If you don't actually solve it correctly, you don't succeed. So I don't know if I kind of skirted your question.
No, I think the part you talked about community, about in a company, everyone knowing everyone else, and it's not about hierarchy.
So there's a couple authors that have done a lot of research. If you looked at the United States in the 60s, largely there was a lot more heterogeneous population, where the CEO and the manager and the VP and the line worker and the janitor, they all lived in the same community. They went to the same schools. They went to the same church. And so they knew each other. Their kids all played together. There was a much more of an integrated understanding of who they were. If you look at the United States today, we are very segregated by zip codes, where it's very affluent here and it's not affluent here, and so we have totally lost track of each other. And I would like, I go home all the time, and I'm guilty of this now. I'll never forget sitting down at a diner at home and looking up at a pair of gentlemen, and I have this reaction like, I wonder what the heck they're doing, and then not 10 seconds later they stop, they say grace over their food. It's clearly a dad and a son now, and the dad says, "What are you doing this weekend?" He goes, "Well, I'm helping the lady next door put a roof on her house." He's like, "Well, how are you doing that? You need to be working." He goes, "I got time. There's material there. She doesn't have any money. I'm going to help her out." And as they're talking back and forth, I'm realizing just what quality human beings they are. I'm like, well, what an ass I am for having any sort of a negative thought about them. I have lost touch with who the people that are not in my zip code. They're not like here. Our problems are trivial relative to the folks in the flyover country. So I think I think a lot of people have opinions about things that they're not very educated about, and I would put myself in there as well.
Do you see a future for yourself in politics?
Oh, geez. No. I would not be good at politics, no.
So what keeps you centered? I mean, you've gone through so many challenges and obviously high stress jobs. What's your go-to strategy and your sort of things that keep you centered, keeps perspective?
Well, it's pretty easy to keep centered when you have kids. Mm-hmm. You look at your kids and you're like, what world do you want to leave to them? Mm-hmm. How do you want do you want them to have the same opportunities that you had? Do you want them to be able to achieve on their own merits? That's a huge part of my motivation. My folks certainly instilled that. My dad's 81, my mom's 78, and they're still totally involved. Mm-hmm. They're involved in everything. And I'm thinking, why are you working so hard? Like, Dad coaches this high school basketball team that needed a coach. Like, why would you do that? Well, you got plenty to do. Or and she's working at the she goes to the store that sells secondhand goods to help support one of the other schools. Like, I can write a check, and it's this more, but it's actually the community effort that actually matters more than the amount of money that they put in. So I think leading by example, making a difference to the people around you that you can make a difference for is really important. And again, it kind of comes back to personal responsibility. If we're doing the things that'll make the world better, then then we don't have to rely on legislation or government or policy to do that.
So we're going to open it with questions, but there's a lot of entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, executives in this room. What if you could give them an inspiration in one sentence? What would that be? No pressure.
Yeah. I would say when you pick the thing that you're going to build a business on, pick one that you will die trying. That if you're eating rice and beans every day, and there's 10 reasons why you shouldn't succeed, that it's worth it to die trying, because those are the people that succeed.
Wonderful. So now, as I promised, we're going to open it up to questions, and you get to go first.
Thanks very much. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about that inflection point or the starting point when you've got the idea and you've had it for a couple of technology companies and you're in the basement, you don't have a lot of resources, and you want to build the technology, right? How important is it to think about the quality of that technology at that point versus when you start to scale? Do you think about it like we're going to get something out in the market and at some point we'll rewrite it and that will be okay? Or do you think about it more like it has to be really perfect now. We've got to do the best thing, so we're going to hold off and, invest and get the best people. Like, how do you look at those two things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that you, first of all, you need to get a path to your first customer or your first set of customers. Like, how do I get there? How do I build something that you can, with pride, get them to pay for? And if it's crappy, then I don't feel good about them paying for it, nor will they necessarily be too excited about paying you more, telling the next customer that's a good thing. So I would just say, how do you get there? People will often ask me, I'm going to be a little off target with your question, but they'll say, how do you get started? How do you get started? I'm like, I don't know. I never have a plan. I've never built a business plan. I don't have I don't know who to hire next. I don't have we're going to have these 10 people and this skill. I have no idea. It's just, there's 2 or 3 of us that get excited about an idea. We know what skills we have and what's missing, and then we add that. And we just go as far as we can with just those 4 people, and then we see if we can get somebody to pay us for the thing that we just built. And if they will, then we keep going. And then where's the next really pressing need? And then we hire that. And pretty soon there becomes a little bit more of a picture, like, oh, we're going to need 3 of these people and 2 of that, and it's time to have a sales force and so forth. But at the beginning, from a technical perspective, I mean, if you're technical, you will know the pain you're going to suffer by doing a crappy thing just to get it out there versus doing the upfront work. I always think it's hard to once you create some technical debt, it's hard to then go back and redo things because you're building on that technical debt. And at Smartsheet, at year 3, we started over. Not because we didn't build good infrastructure, but because we built, and the concepts were all right. Use a spreadsheet metaphor, be able to hook documents to it, create hierarchy. Those core concepts were all the same, but it was just a little bit too hard for people to use. We put too much structure into it. We're like, hey, we're IT people. We know what it's going to take for businesses to have the right structure. That's the reason they don't use anybody's software to track work, is because they don't like structure. They don't like rules or process. And so you had to take all those out. And we're looking at this going, oh man, rules and process are built into this thing all the way to the core. And so even though it was some modest changes, we just had to start all over. And that was 18 months. And Madrona, who had just put money into us, said, what? Well, you're going to start over? We can, we'll take our money back if you want. But it ended up working out. I would always say that to the extent you can, don't ever let the core not be pretty sound. Unless you have a ton of money and you can start over again and again.
Hi, you spoke a lot about perseverance and the story about, okay, if you just endure, there's success. But I'm sure in your career, there's many instances where that persevering doesn't actually lead you to success, that it's really about the courage to stop and change direction. Are there instances of that? Because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, often we don't realize we're chasing capital and ego, and we don't realize it until everything around us is in chaos. And so I think it's a helpful message for us is to see, like even in your career, where you thought you were going the right direction, and you were able to just stop and either pivot or decide on something else.
Well, I mean, my 3-year spot at Smartsheet was that moment where we looked up and said, our customers are telling us, either through their behavior electronically and bailing out, or our inability to get them to a paying perspective, that it's not going to be successful. And so we could have kept pressing that. Hey, this is the right thing. This is the right thing. But that would have been a failure. We would have been an also-ran with the other 800 companies that are doing it. And so our answer was, it's still a big problem to solve. We know that the core concepts we have are right. We got to keep working on the design. And so, quite literally, I almost had to sell my house. Right at the 18-month mark, we had 2 months cash left over. I'm talking to mom on the phone. I'm like, hey, can you guys lend me some? And so it was. I had to believe. I had to totally believe. I think oftentimes what it is it's not. Sometimes it's willingness to succeed, but it's just some people have a bad idea, right? Every single farmer I talk to knows why I'm doing this. Every single farmer. If there's no farmers in here, you have no idea why I'm doing this. But every single farmer, and so like it is a big problem. And if I can solve it, it will be more like Uber than it will replacing the. Ubers didn't just replace taxis; they created a market. Now, I take Uber to a dinner at a friend's house because I want to have a drink there. Before, I would never have done that with a taxi. So that it's made the market bigger. Same thing with rock picking. People do just the bare minimum, what they have to do, and they'll use the mechanical tools just as much as they can before they run out of cuss words. And then, but now, if this thing really works, people will pick fields they would never have picked. So I think a lot of times it's not just perseverance. It's a good idea. Just so you know, I am 0 for 7 in investing in other people's ideas. 0 for 7.
Three more, that's the rule. 10.
Yeah.
You'll get it more. So I was.
I'm sorry. I'm not the picker.
Sorry, I have a question. You mentioned in your previous company, it was very transparent for employees, like your books and stuff, and how much revenue is coming in and out. Is that right?
That we did what?
That it was very transparent for employees, like the company's books.
We didn't open the books to come. The point was that we wanted to be transparent. We wanted to make decisions that if the books did open, people will look at it, they go, that's the way it is. But the problem, one of the challenges we have, and it was pretty open at Onyx and at Smartsheet really before for quite a while, but when you go public, you can't do that anymore. So that's a giant change. We went public at Onyx in year 5. We went public at Smartsheet in year 13. And once we went public, it changed. I'm a chronic oversharer. Chronic. One of my favorite things to do with employees is go, look, I'm going to tell you something, but don't tell anybody else. and everybody just, it's fun to be on the inside and know what's going on and have, and have that knowledge when you're making decisions for your part of the business. I have the advantage of knowing everything in the business as a CEO, so you bet. I make good decisions because I have, I know it all. And then how would I expect someone that's running the services group to be, to make as good of decisions when they don't know what's happening in development, they don't know what's happening in the consulting group, and so oversharing and transparency. But we didn't physically have the books open for everybody all the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but when you said like if they will open accidentally and people will see it, like what they were supposed to see to make an assumption that it's about right, like that.
It would be like how much you got paid and how much I got paid and how much he got paid, and then how much stock or options you had and how much options he had. And if we just hired a spanky new person from Amazon or somebody from somewhere, like how much did they make? Well, they haven't been here for X number of years like I have. Like, why would they make more than me? And so if you could look at that and go, impact on the business, the value that we're all creating, yes, that totally makes sense. I get it. Yeah,
Okay,
I see that the person that we all think is a crappy employee isn't actually making that much. So maybe the reason that we have that person here is because they're doing a job that nobody else wants to do, and they're getting paid commensurately.
Okay, thank you.
So working with a company that's pre-revenue but has a very solid foundation of technology, and so ready to kind of come out of stealth mode and really take the idea to market. And we know we've got a great market. It's a great product market fit so far. Now, of course, we have to get our first 10 logos. But as far as bringing in investment money, do you bias at that stage typically to go for as much funding so you can get a faster acceleration from a hiring perspective, a dev, or do you try to bootstrap, or somewhere in between?
That is a great question, and half the answer to that is very personal. Your personal, like, how do you feel? Do you want other people to have control of the business? Do you want to maintain as much of the equity as possible? It's totally a personal thing. I divide fundraising into two buckets. One is the promise, and the other is the proof. When you're in the early stage, like you're describing, you're in the promise. Hey, look at this cool thing we've got, and this is what it could be, and it's easier to have a whatever the value is at that point because there's no numbers. I can't do a multiple on because you have no revenue. And so at that point, if you're good at selling your idea, then yeah, get as much as you can. I would definitely say I'm in the camp of saying I would never want to mislead an investor. It will only bite you in the end. So I'd never want to do that. But yeah, get as much as you can at that point. Because then the second one is improve. You went and got your 10 customers and you implemented your go-to-market and you've got this many leads coming in and this is your close rate and here's your conversions. And now what the investor is going to do is go, well, okay, I can actually see your business plan in your in the math now, and I'm going to apply it against the total addressable market, and then this is what you're worth. So now you're doing our proof, or you're saying I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it better because the money you give me is going to accelerate the conversion rate and the lead flow and so then they're going to write all that down, and if they do invest, they're going to hold it up against you later. If they don't invest and you're back to see them 6 months later, they go, well, let's see, what did you say before? And so the proof one is a little harder to get a better valuation on.
Hi, I'm David. I'm an entrepreneur and a UW student from China and Singapore. I really appreciate your innovation, the new invention, and I know you have global perspective. And my question is, how do you anticipate that TerraClear will expand to China? Because there's a huge market in China. And to add on, I really have prestigious ties and network to make it possible in terms of agriculture.
You can bring us to China?
Yeah, oh yes, I'd love to.
I might have to be able to pick 4,000 rocks an hour to offset the labor difference, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, I'm very honored that I was just admitted to the inaugural summer program from Global Innovation Exchange Institute under Professor Vikram.
Nice work.
Thank you.
So, Mike, thank you for being here, by the way. I appreciate everything you're doing. If there's a company that is innovating and possibly, is Smartsheet ever interested in acquiring companies that are going to maybe find a solution that Smartsheet is working on that they want to solve? Like if you have a tough problem you're trying to solve now, are you guys open to looking at new solutions that you could, with all your resources and capital you have now, and you've got a small company that's, capital poor, but they have the technology. Are you guys open to discussions with companies like that?
Sure we are. I mean, we just did that with a company out of Edinburgh called Converse AI that has a technology that fit really well. Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing the BD on for the product strategy, but certainly anything that will benefit a customer, whether it's a solution or a service or a feature, are all things that the team is looking at.
Hello. So regarding culture, when you're starting out, how do you go about making sure the culture values that the team of 4 or 5 of you have really scales up to hundreds of people, and how do you stay true to that?
Well, I believe that culture is like an apple; it rots from the core out. So it's going to reflect you if you're the CEO, and it's going to reflect your the immediate executive team, and it doesn't take but one that does not have the right culture to ruin it all. And so, they say A's hire A's and B's hire C's. Well, it's the same thing culturally, that you just have to, especially that initial group. And it is amazing when you get the initial group and then the people that are working with them. If that's a focus, then it has an incredible power as you grow bigger to remain that way. And like our organizations have kind of all of their own accord sort of ejected people that don't have the right culture. They come in like, that person just doesn't fit. They don't fit, and then they're out. So, culture is personal, so you can pick which one you want. I would say that the kind of culture Larry Ellison would create, it would be different than the one I would. So.
Hi, I was just wondering, in the beginning you mentioned there are a set of questions that you ask individuals that are interested in potentially coming onto the company, and I was just wondering if you could elaborate and maybe share what those questions are.
Can I do it? Can I practice on you?
Sure.
So it is, so I have this little parlor trick that I do sometimes with one of the other founders at Smartsheet, where I'd ask 3 or 4 questions, and then he would ask the next one, and I'd write on a piece of paper and flip it over, and that would be what the person would say next. Because I could guess what they were going to say. I've done probably 4,000 interviews. What I like to start with is characterize yourself. And then you'll say, personally or professionally? I'll say, whatever, you pick. And then you talk about yourself, and then based on what you say, I'll ask, well, and I'll pick something that you said. I'll say, well, what motivates you? Why do you go to work? Like, why'd you pick the company? Why? And then that will be a good reason to ask, well, why'd you pick Smartsheet? Given the things you just said, what do you think is in Smartsheet? Like, and if you could create a culture of your own, what would it look like? And why would it be that way? And then I'll ask something like, well, what are you most proud of? And you'll tell me, and you'll probably, because you're probably awesome, you'd say, well, I'm proud of my friends and my family, and that's the perfect answer for me. Because a lot of people will pick something very like, I'm really proud that I coded this, something algorithm that did something. Like, really, that's what you're most proud of? I don't think I'd put that on my tombstone. And so you get a sense for who they are, and most people are consistent across their lives. They're consistent in how they treat their friends, their business, so I can find out a lot about you just by knowing did you play sports? And if you did, was it a team or individual? And I mean, so there's a lot there, and it almost never has to do with the specific discipline that you're applying for. Do you know how to do SEM marketing?
No. Thank you.
Hi, my name's G. I'm a Tsinghua alumni, so I met Vikram at the JIX opening. Good to see you again. And my question for you is, in terms of business development and what's going on here at CoMotion, what do you feel are some of the cultural barriers with your experience abroad that are preventing investments either coming into the United States or hindering American companies from developing abroad?
What are the cultural barriers that are preventing investments coming in or preventing the development of businesses outside?
Yes.
I don't know if I have a good answer for that, because for investments coming in, there's a lot of investment money here, so it's like, if the investments that are coming in are more competitive and are better beneficially for us, like if SoftBank's money was came with more expertise than Madrona's, then I might take that. But right now there's great local expertise, a lot of money, and good valuations that come with the folks that are close. So it's actually there's no reason to go outside. And then investing outside, so whether whether money's from here is going to develop part of your business in the other country, or you're doing outsourcing, again, it's an economic and time to market decision. I don't know if it's cultural. I mean, other than maybe the time zone, the language barrier, or fear of IP theft, or I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you.
I have a dummy question. How do you pick your co-founders?
How do I pick them?
Yeah, because I heard a lot of people saying that right people in right job versus personality, and I want to hear your perspective on that.
I don't know who those people are that said. I think it is personality. I think you're not going to be friends with your co-founders at the end. About 90% of the time, that's going to be true. And it happens over and over and over. People will come in, I'm thinking about, Susan and I are thinking about starting this thing together. I'm like, well, how well do you know Susan? And, oh, no, we know each other pretty well. You know, we're both agreed on how this is going to be. And then, it turns out Susan's the one doing all the work. And, Bob that I just talked to, he just got married and he's got a kid. So that's his reason why he can't work as much as Susan, but he still thinks he's going to get paid as much and ought to have as much influence on it. But Susan's actually the one that, it's like, it happens every time. And for whatever reasons. So I think the personality and character, these are people that you're basically marrying to go and, because when you get to that 100-person mark, guess what? One of you isn't suited for the management job, and someone's probably going to have to be the main one in charge. And then how do you deal with that? Almost never does it work out that you can, the founders can all escalate at the same rate. Sergey and Bryn, anomaly. So I think you definitely want to pick personality, and they've got to be able to add value, but.
So with all the investments that's happening in AI, and admittedly there's a lot of good breakthroughs that's happening, do you think we're reaching the point of going past this hype cycle where a lot of these investments and business plans that are coming up would go bust? Or do you think there's still a lot of in it that we can actually make some good sustainable businesses using AI and machine learning?
Specific to AI? Mm-hmm. Well, as much as I don't like to agree with Gartner or anything, I do agree with their trough. I don't know, have you ever seen their graph that says, here's this new technology, and everybody gets really excited about it, and then I should draw it your way, and then it sort of drops off, and then it goes in whatever trough of despair where nothing happens, and then it actually gets used in actual products and becomes more of a market driven thing. I think that's where we are. Is that yes, it's going to be a critical part of things that we do in the future. There's no way it isn't going to be, and it just needs to get put into things that people use.
You said where we are, dip or before the dip?
Oh, I think we're in the dip, but I don't know. I'm not an expert at AI. Some of the guys I work with at TerraClear, they know a lot about it, but I don't.
One more question. As far as global expansion goes, in your experience, when you did it operationally, did you find, how do I ask this? Was support easy to get? Like when you picked a country, however that happened, and then to go land in that country, was it kind of, we'll learn as we go, we'll get in there, we'll figure it out? Did you have good resources? How did you find good resources to do that? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, so your venture guys, if you have any, or gals will know. There are other companies who have done it, and they'll say, well, this law firm was good, and this recruiting firm was good, and this is a good to help with those things. I would say, to the extent you can, push off the in-country thing as long as you can. We were in 11 countries at Onyx, and we had offices there, and we had legal teams, and there was all this infrastructure, and we had those within 6 years of starting. We're 13 years old at Smartsheet, and we just opened one. And that was, giant part of our revenue comes from outside the United States, but we're online. And so, it's kind of a different world. It's pretty painful to have operations in other countries with the different employment laws. And, is this going to be taped? Like, you ever going to play this again? My favorite one is, we're never going into France. We're in. Well, that's a good question. We bought that company in Edinburgh, so Scotland, and then we have a really a good beginning nucleus in London.
So this general question about what you've experienced, but also what you've heard from other founders as you talk to them about different phases of growth, where the challenge has been maybe the founders have exceeded their ability to maybe lead as a CEO. Do you push through that and try to learn how to become a CEO and grow with your company, or are you biasing towards allowing external, more quote-unquote professional managers come in, like your Bessemer would say, hey, we're going to give you $300 million, but we'd like you to bring so-and-so in from Oracle to run, and therefore you're going to be hiring your boss, in a sense. What are the challenges? What have you seen work well and what's not?
I think the best thing to do is always step outside your business, look at it, dispassionately and go, what is in the best interest of the business and the shareholders? Is it me in there or not? And we're not all good at assessing ourselves, so that's kind of hard. And so it's good if you have trusted people that would give you their candid thoughts on that. At Onyx, I had a firm come in and do that 3 times to say, was I the guy? Should I be the guy? And whether I was great at it or not, one of the things they came up with every time was that the company very much reflected my personality, and so it would be like a death in the family if I wasn't in that role. At Smartsheet, we're 6 months old, and I'm like, I am not going to be the CEO. And so I found, I talked Mark Mader into doing it, who is going to be and is an exceptional CEO. And and it's you can have so I'm sort of a case study in my own talk about whether people scale in a role or whether you can have impact if you're not in a hierarchically in a spot. If you're doing a good job, you can have a lot of influence. So I did marketing, and that worked great. I didn't have to worry about butts and seats and all the different roles, and did the board deck get done for the board meeting, and I'm like, oh, so great. And as you can see, Mark is he's a world-class CEO.
Hi, my name's Hannah. I am a recent adopter of using Smartsheet, and our whole nonprofit org is using it actually, and so I was just wondering what your favorite functionality is or any tips you have.
Hannah, you're cool. I'll remember her name. I like the update request a lot. And I don't know if you use that, but basically you can pick a row or a set of rows, and you can send an email out to someone, and they just get those rows. They don't see the rest of your sheet, and they can update whatever you ask them to update. And then it confirms for you what was changed, changes it in your sheet, and they never see your sheet, which is one of the big problems with using a spreadsheet. Like, will you update this? You send them the whole spreadsheet. They see everything. And it just, for a person that is the coordinator of complex stuff with lots of people, being able to send out these little snippets to different people in email and have them answer in email instead of learning your tool, I think that's super clever.
Time for one more question. Let's go. I think he's new. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No.
Hi, my name is Randy. I'd like to wrap up with this question. So, as for your current venture, what is the largest challenge that you have ever met, and what is your plan to overcome it?
What is the largest challenge, what?
What's the largest challenge, and how? And what's your plan to overcome it?
It's a mean question to end with. So hard. So I mentioned that all the technology exists today to pick a rock automatically. Like vehicles drive themselves, drones fly themselves, the AI can say rock, not rock. I mean, all that stuff it all exists. The thing that doesn't exist is a mechanism for actually grabbing the rock. It's not the same. I mean, it's most things that you do, like they're predictable. I'm picking up a cupcake and I'm setting it in a hole. But the rocks are different size, they're different amounts of buried, the soil conditions are different, when you're going after it, the vehicle that's going there is bouncing all around. It's like, how do you actually acquire that thing? And that, is it a scoop, is it a claw, is it what does it look like? And so that's the hardest problem. And so how are we going about solving that? We are iterating with toys, with actual things off of big machines. We are iterating in every way we can, as fast as we can. And it's a rodeo. I mean, it's an absolute rodeo watching the things. And the shelf now, the trials that we have tried, the different things we have, you would think we're crazy. Oh, it'll be a great case study in the future, I think.
Okay, on that note, Brent, thank you. This was very inspiring. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for coming, for great questions. And as you can see, Brent leaves no stone unturned.
Oh, you've been waiting for that.